Okay, we are live. We're going to let it breathe just for a moment while we bring on our Facebook community. And then we're going to get things cooking. Really excited to talk with Jazz Nation tonight. It's going to be a gas, and it looks like we're good. So, welcome in, everybody. This is the Frozen Rope Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me is my partner in crime, the deputy editor of our website, Patrick Byrnes. Pat, bro, it's been a week or so. I've missed your musk, as the kids say nowadays. But no, really, things seem to be looking up for the Utah Jazz. It was a little dicey the way things started this season, and although they're obviously far from being out of the woods, it seems like there's some positive momentum, and we have our theories behind that. But first things first, how are you feeling about this team's outlook going into tonight's game? Not necessarily trying to handicap tonight's game breakdown tonight, but just the outlook of the Jazz after the last couple of performances.
I mean, it's positive. I'm positive about it compared to what I was. The very first few games. That Horton Tucker Clarkson combination wasn't working. The Kessler and John Collins starting the game off on the court at the same time. That wasn't working. So there's some. There's definitely some things positive. Obviously, the George, playing point guard, that's helped a lot. The turnovers, have helped with him, handling the ball more. But yeah, I mean, I think it's rosier than it was when it first started. But I'm anxious to see what happens tonight if they can keep it going.
Dude, it's crazy that in the two games Keyonte has started at the one, he has 20 assists and only 3 turnovers. And it was interesting hearing Coach Hardy talk about this after Friday night's game. Just a couple things I want to read here and get your feel for, or your take on this, Pat, is because look, you were one of those in Jazz media that quite quickly after the Keyonte pick was made in the draft was like, yeah, I could actually see him being a one, at some point, depending on how he develops. And but not a lot of people were talking about Keyonte George that way. And it was interesting hearing Hardy talk about the turning point where they kind of realized, okay, that's what his future is. This is what he said Friday night after the game, after the win, quote, "This summer, conversations with Keyonte and then watching him play summer league and then obviously being in our gym all summer, you started to really see the passing, which I think we thought was there, maybe not at this level, but once we saw his ability to sort of get the ball where it needs to go, based on his size and ball handling and those things, it was sort of a no-brainer that playing the one is sort of where we think his future is," close quote. So are you surprised to see it develop that quickly into his? I mean, he's beaten Donovan in terms of how many games it took to get into the starting lineup.
Yeah, he did. I think Donovan was game 14 before he was inserted in the starting lineup. But, the Jazz, they needed, it was almost at the point to where they didn't have a choice based on the performance of, the way that Clarkson and Horton Tucker were turning the ball over. We're averaging 18.5 turnovers a game. Keyonte George, solves that problem. He's still young, he's still going to make mistakes and, he still needs some live reps to get better. But I don't think there's any question, like he's the best facilitator on the team. And the Jazz are better moving forward for it.
Austin, by the way, dude, really appreciate you being with us. Thanks for the comments. Keep dropping them, dude. That's why we do these as a live stream. We want your thoughts, your questions, your take on things. And yeah, occasionally we have a technical difficulty that'll will lag a few minutes from the go time. So appreciate your patience staying with us, Austin. Back to the topic at hand here, Keyonte George. Now, really positive developments, the way things are unfolding with the new lineup. How does it change when Walker comes back? When he returns from that injury, how does that change the equation here?
That's a great question, and that's kind of what I'm. As far as the pecking order, Walker Kessler's pretty high up there. As far as being able to be a starter, but there are issues. With him and John Collins being on the floor at the same time. Hasn't been pretty so far, and like Kessler, Hardy will sub in for when Kessler was starting. Hardy would sub in for Kessler like 4 or 5 minutes in the game. And you can't even get in a rhythm, 4 or 5 minutes in the game. I think if you're a starter, you play at least 6 to 8 minutes before they sub you out. But I think Hardy does recognize that there was an issue with, Kessler and Collins on the floor together. So he would get out Kessler pretty quick and put Olynyk in. So we'll see what happens when he does come back. But, Kessler is a big part of the, equation as far as, the Jazz success this year. So he's going to have to find a way to get those guys to contribute. And I don't know if they can be on the floor together. I'm sure they're going to try.
Yeah.
But this does remind me a little bit of the Rudy Gobert, Derek Favors issue, when Favors was here. Remember they would start those two together?
Yep.
And, it didn't work. So we'll see. Like I said, there's a lot of live reps to be played before you can make an ultimate decision. But for the Jazz ultimately to be successful, they need John Collins at his best, and they need Walker Kessler on the floor too. So without Kessler, they don't have that rim protection.
That's one of the drawbacks of the volume in roster turnover. I mean, it's been needed. Obviously, they've needed to churn things and kind of kick the can down the road in a positive sense. But one of the downsides to that is, it does upset the chemistry, and the coaches have to kind of come back to the issue and figure out what combination of dudes is going to jive best for whatever the scheme is and whatever the points of emphasis are. But Walker Kessler, I agree with you. Like when you talk about a pecking order, the way he emerged and just really what he brings as a defensive presence for the Jazz is no one else obviously on the roster can match that, but he also has that long-term kind of shine to him where it is in the Jazz best interest to obviously find ways to keep him on the court. So it will be interesting. Now, Ochai Agbaji, he's also been a big reason why things have looked better. Look, the Jazz were 1-1 since the official lineup change. So it's not like it's been perfect, but it's palpable. You can just see things are moving better. Keyonte's facilitating. Guys are getting the ball when they need to. He's building chemistry with guys. But what changes with Ochai if and when Walker returns? Not if and when Walker returns.
Yeah, that's the question. Does Agbaji get taken out of the starting lineup? I think Agbaji is, it's good to have him in that starting lineup because he's one of the few guards that the Jazz have that doesn't need the ball in his hand to be effective. He can space the floor, slash to the basket. He's not great with the ball in his hand, like driving to the hoop, creating his own shot. He's one of those 3-and-D players that you stick in the corner and he spaces the floor, and then he plays better defense than, the Jazz other wings do. So, because Agbaji's skill set is so much different than Clarkson, Horton Tucker, Keyonte George, you need guys like that. You need guys that don't have to have the ball in their hand in offensive half-court sets. They can hit threes, space the floor, and play defense. And really, Agbaji's the only guy on the Jazz that can do that. So I'd like to see him on the floor a lot more for sure.
I would too. And we know nothing significant is going to change relative to Jordan Clarkson's role in minutes.
No.
Like they just this regime loves Jordan Clarkson, and it's understandable. I mean, he can be great, but we still wonder if he might not be best served as that sixth man coming off the bench. A quick shout out to Car Wash in the house. Good to see you tonight. Really appreciate you saying win and get to 4-7, get to 2-0 in the in-season tournament. Absolutely. Says also, I want Walker to return, but I don't want him to start. We need Keyonte George to start. Yeah, Keyonte, I think, Pat, is going to continue in that role regardless of what the Jazz do in the front court. The one thing that Utah needs from Keyonte as he kind of continues to grow as a rookie and develop as the one in this system is he needs some of those shots to start dropping, because that's the only fly in the ointment thus far. Is we've seen already in his young Jazz career how potent a scorer he can be and how great a shooter he can be. But going 2 for 12 the other night, even though the Jazz came out on top and whatnot, not ideal. Although, again, listening to Coach Hardy after that game, he wasn't picking any nits really in Keyonte. He knows that Keyonte hated going 2 for 12 from the field, but he liked the decisions he was making in terms of when he would choose to take those shots. So with a guy as talented as Keyonte is, Pat, it's only a matter of time before it starts raining down makes.
Yeah, the player he reminds me of, like obviously he's not where this guy's at right now. We're talking about one of the best players in the league, but he does remind me of Jamal Murray. And when I watch him play, the only thing that Jamal Murray, I mean, one of the best things about Jamal Murray is he's an incredible shot maker. He can make shots all over the floor. And if Keontae George can get to the point to where, he can knock down shots like Jamal Murray. I mean, we'll have like a Jamal Murray on the team. That's what he is. He can create his own shots. He can play the two. He can play the one. He can dribble. He can facilitate. He can, if there's 5 seconds left on the shot clock, he can get a decent shot off. There's a lot he can do. So, but you're right, though. That is the one thing that he has to be able to do is just hit shots. But yeah, that'll come in time.
And when it does come together, man, it's going to be a whole other dynamic for the Jazz. Now, Pat, let's take a look, shift gears a little bit. Back at it tonight, obviously, at home, Portland Trail Blazers. How do you see this one shaking out for the Jazz, and what are a couple of your keys?
And it's a game the Jazz should win. Portland, they're not great to begin with. I think their projections, like the odds makers, had them only winning 26, 27 games this year. So they're missing Brogdon, probably one of their guys, kind of the guy that keeps the team together. The point guard, he's veteran presence. They're missing their the second overall pick of the draft, Scoot Henderson. So that's a big deal. We're at home. It's a game that means a lot. The Jazz are a 6.5 point favorite, so the odds makers recognize that the Portland's not at full strength, so it's a game we should win, and I'll be really disappointed if we don't win this game.
Yeah, I know a lot of Jazz fans wanted to get a look at Scoot Henderson, but what is it, 2 or 3 week injury, if I remember reading correctly. So he'll live to fight another day. Jazz fans will get a look at him down the road, but they need to parlay this into a victory if they want to start really turning the ship around. They've got a little bit of momentum rolling. They've kind of stumbled onto something with the new lineup change, and this to me is an important game for the Jazz, especially it being at home in conference. I predict they win. I predict that it's probably about what the odds makers are setting in terms of the margin. I like the Jazz tonight.
Yeah, I do too, and they should win. Like, it's a game they should win. I don't think we've been favored in a lot of games this year, but this is by far the most we have been favored. I know we haven't been favored by 6 points. When we are favored, it's like 2 or 3. But over the next 10 games, we play Portland twice. We play the New Orleans Pelicans twice at home. The Pelicans are struggling. We play the Lakers, which, it's a winnable game. You never even know if LeBron's going to play or, what they're going to do with their game, their players. But,
yeah,
it's a game that we could win. We do play the Suns twice in that stretch. I can see us losing both of those games, but, I could see the Jazz, they could win 6 out of their next 10. It's definitely plausible to do that. I'd be disappointed if we don't get 6 out of the next 10.
Yeah, they got to get working. They got to get cooking right about now. I mean, they are the second to last team right now in the West. They got to start cranking out. So we'll see how it unfolds and circle back here a week from tonight. Of course, Jared Cook will be on Thursday night streaming Salt Lake Takes. So we'll have plenty of content breaking down how this week unfolds for the Utah Jazz. But Pat, any other topics from tonight that we wanted to get to that we haven't quite gone to yet?
I think the one thing that we'll notice first when we start watching the game is the new floor. We got the in-season tournament, and they've been kind of getting the funky floors. It'll be interesting to see what the Jazz, that Jazz floor, what it's going to look like. So that should be fun. I like it. It's different.
Yeah.
You hear people in social media complaining about it, but they'll complain about anything. So I'm looking forward to it. What's that?
As long as they've got access to the he pushed off Wi-Fi, what do they got to complain about?
That's right. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the floor to see what the floor looks like. And yeah, it should be a good game.
I guess it's Jordan pushed off, right? If memory serves, I kind of botched that. But
John,
appreciate you being with us. Good to see you. He says, let's go, Jazz. Let's put this together. Indeed. Let's see it happen. I think it's going to tonight against the Trailblazers, but the action starts here in about an hour and a half. So appreciate each and every one of you being with us. I'm Chad Jensen. This is Patrick Byrnes. Make sure you're keeping it with the Frozen Rope Inside the Jazz, not only on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the X, whatever you want to call it, but also make sure you've got the website bookmarked, easy to remember, insidethejazz.com, part of the Sports Illustrated Media Group. Pat and I will be back for the show next Tuesday, same time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Eastern. And until then, we'll see how the rest of this week shakes out for the Jazz. It's going to be a gas. Pat, had a blast talking, as always, my friend. Always a blast talking.
Yep, it's been fun. And yeah, we got tip off in an hour and a half. So let's go Jazz. Let's do it.
Let's do it. And yes, I still call it Twitter. The whole X thing, I'm like, whatever. I've been on Twitter for like 15 years or something. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, Pat.
Yeah. I mean, X is such a weird name too. Like X, like like what's the even the logic behind X?
Well, Elon, if Elon like has a kid that is it just a number or something, or named a Roman numeral or something, like, he's a little bit of an outside the box thinker, which is, I guess, why he's where he's at right in life. But anyway, guys, thanks for keeping it with us here on the Frozen Rope podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video. Really appreciate it. That goes a long way to helping us keep the lights on here and growing and reaching other members of the Jazz Nation community. And Pat and I will be back Tuesday. Till then, go Jazz.